Emma adjusted her glasses as she watched the busy university cafe. Her fingers tapped nervously beside a worn copy of Schopenhauer she'd been trying to decipher for weeks. 3 years into her psychology degree, she loved academic life, but something was missing. Is this seat taken? She looked up to find a tall man with dark hair and piercing eyes holding a stack of books and black coffee. "No, please," she said, making space. "Schopenhauer?" he asked, noticing her book. "Heavy reading for a Thursday afternoon." Emma smiled, surprised by his interest. "For my philosophy of mind class, I'm struggling with his concept of will. Will, as the essence of being, independent of reason," he remarked, opening his laptop. "Brilliant, but hardly an optimist, was he? You studied philosophy, PhD in theoretical physics, but philosophy has always fascinated me. Science answers how. Philosophy tries to answer why." He extended his hand. "Thomas." Emma. She didn't realize then how this simple encounter would change everything she thought she knew about relationships, intelligence, and vulnerability. Their friendship grew naturally. They met regularly at the university cafe, discussing everything from philosophical theories to daily trivialities. Emma found herself captivated by how Thomas's mind worked. Quick, analytical, profound. "You seem different around him," observed her roommate Olivia one evening. "What do you mean?" "Quieter. Less yourself. Like you're constantly evaluating your words." Emma frowned. She hadn't noticed, but it was true. Around Thomas, she felt simultaneously stimulated and intimidated. His intelligence created a distance she couldn't quite bridge. "I guess I'm just careful about what I say. He knows so much about everything." Olivia gave her a meaningful look. "Since when do you care about sounding smart? You're one of the brightest people I know." That night, Emma wondered why she felt so unsettled around someone she admired so much. As weeks passed, Emma noticed a pattern in her interactions with Thomas. She would start conversations confidently, but the moment he challenged her ideas with his precise logic, she would retreat, conceding points she wasn't sure she disagreed with. One afternoon, as they debated the ethical implications of modern technology, Thomas interrupted her mid-sentence. "That's a common misconception," he said, launching into a detailed explanation of why her perspective was flawed. Emma nodded, feeling a familiar knot in her stomach. Later, walking home alone, she realized she had valuable counterpoints but hadn't voiced them. Why? The answer came unexpectedly from her psychology of relationships professor. Intellectual intimidation often creates power imbalances in relationships. One person becomes the authority, the other the student. Emma sat straighter in her seat. Was that what was happening? Was she allowing Thomas's intelligence to silence her own? "You're overreacting," Thomas said, when Emma tried to explain how. She sometimes felt diminished in their conversations. "I just enjoy intellectual debate." They were sitting in a quiet corner of the library, Emma's textbooks spread before them. She had been practicing this conversation for days. "I know you don't mean to, but when you immediately counter everything I say, it feels like you're not really listening." Thomas sighed, closing his book. "That's how meaningful dialogue works, Emma. Ideas need to be tested. But there's a difference between testing ideas and making someone feel like they shouldn't have spoken at all. If you feel that way, maybe you should develop stronger arguments," he said, his tone gentler than his words. Emma felt her chest tighten. This was exactly the problem, but he couldn't or wouldn't see it. "It's not just intelligence," said Dr. Martinez, Emma's academic advisor, when she cautiously brought up the subject during office hours. "It's how intelligence is wielded." Emma had come seeking advice on her thesis, but the conversation had drifted to her experiences with Thomas. "Some people use intelligence as a shield," Dr. Martinez continued, "or worse, as a weapon. Often, they're protecting something vulnerable beneath." "Thomas doesn't seem vulnerable," Emma said. "He's the most confident person I know." Dr. Martinez smiled knowingly. "True confidence leaves room for others to shine. It doesn't need to extinguish other lights to burn brighter." Walking home, Emma remembered how her father, a brilliant engineer, would fall silent at family gatherings, creating a weight in the room with his unspoken judgments. She had spent her childhood trying to earn his rare approval, just as she now found herself seeking Thomas's. "You too, huh?" said Rachel, a sharp-witted literature student Emma met at a campus event. When Emma mentioned Thomas, Rachel rolled her eyes. "Our brilliant physicist. I lasted 2 dates before I realized I wasn't looking for a professor." Emma felt a strange mix of relief and discomfort. "You dated?" "Briefly. He's attractive, no doubt. And that mind is impressive until you realize he's using it to maintain control." Later that week, Emma noticed Thomas in heated debate with a physics professor, the older man growing increasingly frustrated as Thomas methodically dismantled his argument. There was something almost predatory in Thomas's precision, like a chess player anticipating moves several steps ahead. She began to see it everywhere, how people reacted to him, how conversations shifted when he entered rooms. Women especially seemed to either avoid him entirely or perform for his approval. "Why do you correct people so often?" Emma asked Thomas one day as they walked across campus. The fall leaves crunched beneath their feet, the air crisp with impending winter. He looked surprised. "Do I?" "Yesterday you corrected Professor Williams about quantum entanglement, the barista about the origin of espresso, and me about the author of that quote I mentioned." Thomas frowned. "I was right, though." "That's not the point. Being right isn't always the most important thing in a conversation." "What's more important than truth?" he asked, genuinely perplexed. Emma stopped walking. "Connection, understanding, making people feel heard." Something flickered across Thomas's face. Recognition? Defensiveness? He quickly changed the subject. That evening, Emma received a text from him. "Been thinking about what you said. Maybe I do prioritize being right. Not sure how to be different." It was the first crack in his armor, and Emma felt both hopeful and wary. Over coffee one Sunday morning, Thomas revealed parts of his childhood, growing up as the only child of high-achieving academics, winning his first math competition at 7, skipping grades, always being the youngest and smartest in every room. "Being intelligent was the only thing I knew how to be," he said quietly. "The only thing that made me valuable." Emma saw, perhaps for the first time, the wounded core beneath the brilliance. A boy who learned that worth came from intellectual superiority, who never developed other ways of connecting. "That sounds lonely," she said. Thomas looked up, startled, as if the concept had never occurred to him. "I had books," he said finally. "Ideas don't reject you. People don't either, if you don't force them to compete with you." He didn't respond, but something in his expression shifted. A recognition, perhaps, of patterns long invisible to him. Emma began noticing her own tendencies to intellectualize emotions, to retreat into analysis rather than vulnerability. In her psychology classes, she was quick to diagnose patterns in case studies, but hesitant to apply the same insight to her own life. "We're not so different, Thomas and I," she admitted to Olivia. "I'm just better at hiding it." Olivia nodded. "You both use intelligence as armor. His is just more obvious." This realization came to a head when Emma's father visited campus. Watching the two men interact, both brilliant, both using knowledge to establish dominance, was like seeing the pattern from the outside. Her father praised Thomas's academic achievements while subtly questioning his career choices. Thomas responded with deferential language that contained hidden challenges. After her father left, Emma felt exhausted from mediating their veiled intellectual sparring. "He reminds me of you," Thomas said later. "I know," Emma replied. "That's what worries me." It happened during a dinner with friends, Thomas systematically dismantling a point made by Emma's close friend Jade, who worked with disadvantaged youth. His arguments were logical, his evidence sound, but he missed the emotional weight of Jade's first-hand experience. "You're talking about statistics," Jade said finally, her voice tight. "I'm talking about children I know by name." Thomas opened his mouth to respond, but Emma cut him off. "Stop," she said firmly. "Just listen, Thomas. Not to respond, not to counter. just to understand." The table fell silent. Thomas looked at Emma, surprise and hurt evident in his expression. After a tense moment, he turned to Jade. "I'm sorry. Please continue." The rest of the evening was awkward, but something fundamental had shifted. On the walk home, Thomas was unusually quiet. "You embarrassed me," he said finally. "You were embarrassing yourself," Emma replied, gentler than her words. "Intelligence without empathy is just arrogance." Thomas withdrew after that night. His texts became infrequent. Their cafe meetings stopped. Emma found herself both relieved and saddened by his absence. "Maybe it's better this way," Olivia suggested. "Some people can't change." But Emma wasn't convinced. She had seen something in Thomas that she recognized in herself, a learned behavior, not an immutable character trait. 3 weeks into this silence, she received a message. "I've been thinking about what you said. You were right. Can we talk?" They met at their usual cafe. Thomas looked different somehow, less armored. "I've been seeing someone," he said. Emma felt a strange disappointment until he clarified. "A therapist. She's helping me understand some patterns." "That takes courage," Emma said sincerely. Thomas nodded. "I've spent my whole life believing intelligence was a solution to everything. It's hard to accept that it's sometimes the problem." As winter turned to spring, Emma and Thomas rebuilt their friendship on different terms. He was still brilliant, still analytical, but there was a new quality to his attention, a willingness to sit with uncertainty, to listen without formulating responses. One evening, studying in the library, Emma noticed Thomas patiently explaining a concept to a freshman who had approached him for help. There was no condescension in his manner, no performative brilliance, just genuine interest in helping someone understand. Later, she mentioned this change. "I'm learning that intelligence isn't just about knowing things," he said. "It's about knowing when to share them, when to question them, and when to set them aside entirely." Emma smiled. "That sounds suspiciously like wisdom rather than intelligence. Maybe they're supposed to be the same thing," he reflected. "I think I've been doing it wrong all these years." Emma's thesis presentation drew a small crowd of faculty and students. Her research on intellectual intimidation in academic settings felt deeply personal now, though she maintained scholarly distance in her delivery. From the back of the room, she could see Thomas listening intently. No notebook, no prepared questions, just presence. During the Q&A, a senior professor challenged her methodology with thinly veiled condescension. Emma felt the familiar urge to concede, to defer to the established authority. Instead, she took a breath and defended her work clearly, acknowledging limitations while standing firm on her core findings. When she finished, she caught Thomas's eye. He gave her a small, proud nod. After the presentation, he handed her a copy of Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation, the same edition she'd been reading when they first met. "I've marked some passages," he said, "about how intelligence without compassion leads to suffering." Emma flipped to a marked page. "Compassion is the basis of morality." "You've been reading Schopenhauer in a very different way," she observed. "I'm learning to read everything differently," he replied. Over the summer, Emma interned at a research institute while Thomas began a postdoctoral position. They met less frequently but with greater quality of connection when they did. During one of their conversations in a park near campus, Emma articulated something that had been forming in her mind for months. "I think what scared me about your intelligence wasn't the intelligence itself," she said. "It was how it made me feel invisible, like my thoughts weren't worth expressing." Thomas nodded slowly. "And what scared me about emotional intelligence was how it made my knowledge seem irrelevant, like knowing facts was worthless compared to understanding people." "We need both," Emma said. "Knowledge without empathy is cold. Empathy without knowledge can be misguided." Thomas smiled. "Is this what growth feels like? It's uncomfortable." "All the best things are at first," Emma replied. At a department function in the fall, Emma observed Thomas in conversation with Rachel, the literature student who had dismissed him months earlier. There was a different quality to their interaction. Now, Thomas listening more than speaking, asking questions rather than making pronouncements. Later, Rachel approached Emma by the refreshment table. Either you've performed a miracle, or he's been replaced by a very convincing humanoid. Emma laughed. Neither. He's just learning what his intelligence is actually for. Aren't we all? Rachel said thoughtfully. I judged him too harshly before. It's easy to reduce people to their most annoying traits. Across the room, Emma's advisor, Dr. Martinez, caught her eye and gave her an approving nod. Emma realized that her own interactions had changed too. She was less defensive, less concerned with proving her worth through knowledge. 1 year after their first meeting, Emma and Thomas sat at the same cafe table, now as colleagues working on an interdisciplinary research project combining psychology and physics. Do you remember what you thought of me when we first met? Thomas asked. Emma considered this. I thought you were brilliant and intimidating. I both admired and resented it. I thought you were one of the few people worth talking to, he admitted, but I was afraid you'd discover I wasn't as smart as I pretended to be. Imposter syndrome? You? Emma raised an eyebrow. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know, he said. That used to terrify me. And now? Thomas smiled. Now I find it liberating. Being the smartest person in the room is exhausting. Being a curious person is much more interesting. Emma nodded, understanding completely. Intelligence shouldn't be a weapon or a wall. What should it be then? He asked. Emma thought about her father, about Thomas, about herself, all using brilliance in different ways, for different reasons. A bridge, she said finally. Something that connects rather than divides. Thomas reached across the table and briefly touched her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. I'm still learning how to build those. Me too, Emma said. Me too. They returned to their work. Two minds engaged not in competition, but in collaboration, finding something neither had fully understood before. That true intelligence is measured, not by how much you know, but by how well you can connect with others despite, or perhaps because of, what you know. And in that realization, they found what had scared them both all along. The vulnerability that comes with authentic connection, more powerful than any intellectual armor they had spent years perfecting.